Okay, so to start, Brisbane is a bloody ripper of a city to ride. In my initial impression of Brisbane is that it would be full of beer drinking, ute driving hooligan bogans that would run down any cyclist in order to harvest their blood to sacrifice to the rugby league gods so that they can guarantee another win in State of Origin. However, I was pleasantly surprised. The city itself is absolutely gorgeous. And aside from one bus driver who I'm pretty sure was trying to kill me, the experience was absolutely incredible. The city has invested in a cycling path that segregates from pedestrians, and it runs around a beautiful and very originally named Brisbane River. Most of the main roads have dedicated cycle paths, and the drivers, for the most part, absolutely courteous. It seems that cycling is genuinely encouraged in this city. So if you're into cycling, it is an absolutely must visit city. It is the most friendly cycling city that I've been to in all of Australia. So definitely add this to your list. And it's also like way prettier than Sydney. So if you're considering coming from overseas to visit Australia, I reckon skip Sydney, maybe even skip Melbourne and just hit up Brisbane. It's probably the best example of like an Australian city. So yeah, add it to the list. So I went up for two reasons. The first is that my cousin has recently moved up there, and due to some COVID complications over Christmas, I didn't see him, so I'm pretty keen to catch up with my cousin. But the other reason was that the Tour of Brisbane, or the Tour de Brisbane, was on last weekend. So at risk of sounding like an agent for the Brisbane government, this ride is genuinely the best ride that I have ever done in regards to like a planned ride by something. So half the city is shut down for the event, and this includes the bridge, the main bridge that crosses over the Brisbane River, as well as toll roads. So this is a big event, smack bang in the middle of a capital city, and it was genuinely cool to ride through the city, although sometimes when you were riding alone it did feel like a day after tomorrow, or some sort of zombie movie where the entire city is evacuated. It was quite strange, but the roads are absolutely fantastic to ride on. Apparently the routes change every year, so it's one to add to the bucket list. One thing that could, however, be improved is the categorization system. So the way they had the categorization system was that you were in an age group. So for example, my cousin was in the 19 to 34 age group, which is a huge age group. There was something like 160 riders just within there. Maybe actually, I think it was 220, which is massive. And I was in the 34 to 39. I had 96 people complete the race, and that was again a huge group. And the problem with this is normally when you race, you're racing in a category A, B, C, D, and this means that the people in that category are generally about the same level as you. However, this is not the case with the Tour de Brisbane, because these people are just the same age as you. You could be riding with A grade riders, B grade riders, or D grade riders. You're all going off at the same time, which makes it hard to jump onto a group that suits your cycling style. And as a result, we'll talk about this a bit later, but you end up starting to maybe push for groups that are outside of your level, particularly over a distance of 110 k's with a pretty serious climb in it. The other thing that I think they could tighten up is some of the signage. So there wasn't heaps of warnings coming up to some decisions, and other times the signage was a little bit perplexing. So for example, you would come up to things that say decision point, where you know that you have to make a choice. So there was a 20k ride, I think, at 50k, and an 80k, as well as the grand final 110. And these fork off in different directions. So at a decision point, you would have to make a decision whether you stay on the ride you're on or whether you make a change. Problem with this is they would say there's a decision point, but they wouldn't say what the decision was. And they use the same signage for rest stops. So you didn't know whether you were coming up to a point where you had to make a decision about what route you were going to take, or whether you were coming up to a rest stop. So if people were looking for rest stops, they knew they had to make a decision, but they didn't know what decision it was for, and as a result you could be on the wrong side of the road for this rest stop. Similar with making decisions about going the 80k route or the 110k route, for example. So that made it a bit tough, and I'd like to see that sort of tightened up. I think it would be quite obvious the ways that you could do this, just to make it a bit more clear. And you'll see me make a wrong turn in this video, and yeah, that was based on some dodgy signage that made it a bit hard to understand where I was supposed to go.
Well, that's awkward. Wrong turn. But that means I'm closer to the finish than I thought I was. Woo.
Anyway, overall, absolutely fantastic experience that I would genuinely recommend. It's a relatively short course instead of the Barrow Classic, which I think is 160, and Three Peaks, which is like plus 200. But it's tough. The hill at the end is hard, and it is some rolling terrain that makes it not an easy ride at 110 k's.
Okay, so this video has taken no small amount of time. Essentially, normally I sort of script out what I'm going to film on videos. However, in this one, it's 100% retrospective after the event. And so as a result, I'm having to trawl through hours of footage. And, you know, that takes time. So if you appreciate this in any way, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Maybe chuck a comment in about your experience or some advice that you might give to people doing longer rides like this in a race-like scenario. Anyway, back to the video.
Lesson number 1, check every bolt. If you're flying with your bike, check every single bolt. I only have rear footage of this, but I did not tighten my headset bolts. Honestly, I forgot I loosened them in the first place. So I get up to a give way sign and I try and rock a sweet track stand, and yeah, my handlebars went one direction and my wheel went the other, leading to a stack. Aside from like a bruised hip and a broken ego, this was not much of a deal. But yeah, just make sure you've tightened everything, because it could have gone haywire. I was going down a hill just before it. If it had happened there, I would have probably wiped myself out of the race. So check every single bolt. Right, lesson 2 is treat the start like a mosh pit for your favorite band. Muscle your way up to the front. I am my own biggest critic, and so I often tend to underestimate my ability, and this self-doubt led to me placing myself about halfway in the pack. However, I probably wasn't at the point that I should have been. I should have pushed myself further to the front, because you can always fall back in one of these races to get to a group that is better suited to you. However, it is much more difficult to work your way up a bunch, leapfrogging different riders, and oftentimes spending a lot of time in no man's land to try and get up to a bunch that is right for you. And I think I burnt a lot of matches in regards to this. So I recommend that you try and get yourself towards the front. Maybe overestimate your ability, because no harm that comes from that, but you can sort of wipe yourself out of the race, or wipe your chance of the best time that you could get because you underestimate your ability. So yeah, like I said, treat the start like a mosh pit. Lesson number 3 is it's not a damn crit. If you do a lot of riding like me, you would be used to a categorized system where you're in A, B, C, or D, maybe even E in your club. And you know the people that you're riding with are at the same level as you. However, in like a mass start where it's age categorized, you don't have that guarantee. And you could be chasing people above your ability because you're in this mentality that it will slow down, it will ebb and flow like crit races do. These kind of longer races don't necessarily do that. I mean, they do have their ebb and flows, but if you're on at a C grade level like I am and you're trying to chase B grade riders, that ebb and flow and trying to hang on is not going to have a benefit in the end, because you're always going to be outside of your comfort zone trying to hang on to these riders, especially if they're doing things like rolling turns, trying to keep the pace high, and this can really knacker you later. And I made this mistake. I tried to stay with a group that was much stronger than me, just thinking it will chill, it would chill, it would chill, and it just didn't, to the point that I needed it to, and as a result I burnt a lot of energy that I probably shouldn't. So yeah, it's not a crit race, it's a different style of racing altogether. Okay, so lesson number 4 is pay attention to the race number colors. So I was in the 35 to 39 and my color was salmon, and anyone else in my category was also salmon. So if you're waiting for other groups to come up behind you, make sure that they have some people at least, in the same colour as you are, because you are also likely being overtaken by the category behind you, or the category that started after you, in this case for me, 40 to 44. Now, that means that these guys have already eaten into the 5-minute lead that they gave us at the start of the race, meaning they are quicker than you. If you try and jump on them, you're going to have the same problem as I raised in lesson number 3. You're chasing guys that are probably stronger than you. So look out for some pink, in my case, in there to see whether this might be a group with people that have come from behind but are in your age category, suggesting that they're able to hang on to this group. They were behind you, suggesting that they're likely slower than you, and that means this might be a group that's a good one to jump on. If there's no people with your race colour in there, it's probably one just to let ride on by, because they're probably going to outdo you.
Okay, so if you'd like to see the remaining tips, plus some extra content, I've set up a Patreon page, and if you could jump...
Got him!
Kidding, not one of those dudes. But it does take some time, and I would appreciate it if you showed me some love. So yeah, bam, comment, subscribe, like. Let's rock on.
Lesson number 5, plan your eating so that it kicks at the right time. So I took 4 carb gels with me, 2 with BCAAs as well, and 2 with caffeine as well. And these are the Fire Start gels from Power Fuel Sports Nutrition. I think they are the absolute bee's knees and the cat's pajamas. So I did a video comparing these to other gels, should be there. And I now know that these take about 20 minutes to properly kick. However, prior to the Tour of Brisbane, I didn't know that. As a result, when I saw the road sign directing me to Mount Cootha, which was the big climb of this race, I smashed a gel. And about 20 minutes later, the gel kicked, conveniently, when I'd already reached the top of the climb. So I was gunning it on the descent. And after that, I felt pretty good, which was fine because it gave me the energy to complete the next 10 Ks and finish the race at a pretty good clip. However, really would appreciate that gel to have kicked in when I was on the climbs.
Hey, how much further do you reckon?
Try and work out how long it takes for your gels to actually kick, a little bit of trial and error out on normal rides, so that you know when you should be taking that gel in preparation for these big moments in the race. Lesson number 6 is recon climbs. So coming into the race, so many people had told me, watch out for Mount Cootha, watch out for Mount Cootha, and I was like, yeah, whatever, mate. I live at the foot of the Great Dividing Range. I am a climber. I love climbing. I climb like for every bike ride. Who are you to tell me to watch out for Mount Cootha? I eat Mount Cootha for breakfast. However, it turned out that Mount Cootha was something to be feared because it's like 2.16 climb on the Strava segment with an average gradient of 8.9, and it maxes out at 18% with long stretches of like 14 to 16%. And this is after you've already done 2 smaller climbs that are about the same gradient. So you're sort of climbing for maybe 3.5 kilometers, and it's tough, man. So I was really struggling with cramp on this climb, and I said to my cousin, like, how much do we have left? And he said 500 meters, and I was good after that. I even felt like I wasn't going to cramp anymore just because I knew that the climb was almost over. However, if I'd done like the ride before, spotted some landmarks that given me an idea of when I'm sort of getting to the top or whereabouts I am on the climb, I think I would have felt much more secure. So in the future, I'm going to at least drive the major climbs of these kind of races, try and get there the day before and knock out a bit of a recon so that I know roughly what I'm in for, sort of to help with the mental state. Now, some people might not like this. Some people would prefer it to be a surprise. I think you're a maniac. So, recon the climbs.
So we just finished Cootha, rolling through the tunnel now. My GPS says 9 Ks to go. And all I have to say is, fuck Mount Cootha. Fuck no.
The last one. Remember to have fun. You're not riding the Tour de France. Remember that you're like paid to be here, and sure, you're trying to get the best time that you can, and I get that, but it should also be fun. So don't put yourself into the red for long periods of time when you just don't have to. Don't push yourself past your limits and risk not finishing one of these, because that's where the real satisfaction is. Crossing that finish line, knowing you gave it your all, but also that you finished the ride. I was able to stay with a group that was fast because I made some good calls at about the 60k mark, but I also think that I probably pushed myself too hard up to that 60k mark, trying to treat it like a race, even though I was not prepared in regards to my training. At about 60k's, I turned to my cousin, I said, mate, I can't keep this pace up. And he said, thank fuck, because neither can I. So we dropped back and we rode together. The person on the front was still averaging, for me, about 210 to 220 watts, which is high zone 2, low zone 3 for me. But yeah, we weren't taking it easy, but we were being realistic, and I genuinely think this made us have a really good time and also finish the race. So yeah, like I said, remember to have fun. It's an event. It should be enjoyable.
So that's my experience. It might not be emblematic of everyone's experience, and people might have contradicting thoughts and feelings about the event itself. However, I thought it was excellent. I really enjoyed myself while I was there, and yeah, I'm interested to hear any of your stories from the weekend, or if you're planning on doing some future rides. I also am, and I'd like some tips about ones that I might look at targeting in the future. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. This is it from me. Peace.